Luke Brennan adjusted his tie twice before stepping into the library. He never did that. The CEO of Kingswell Holdings voted most ruthless mind on Wall Street. 3 years in a row wasn't the kind of man who second-guessed his image. But tonight, something was different. The air inside the room felt still, too still, like the silence just before an earthquake. And across the chessboard sat someone who should have never been there, a woman who swept the marble floors 3 hours earlier, still in her work shoes, hair pinned up with a safety clip. Her name was Marlene. No last name. No record, either, not even in the company system. You didn't hear about this meeting from the press release. It's not on security footage. What you're watching is raw, leaked from a source who vanished 6 days after sending it. That's why there's no sound at the beginning, just the shuffling of pieces, the way her eyes never blink, and Luke's jaw tightening with every second. You're not supposed to know any of this. But if you're still here, then maybe it's already too late to unsee it. It started with a question. 1, she asked as her hand hovered above a pawn. Just 5 words. Do you remember the fire? Luke didn't flinch, but his pupils constricted like she'd reached into his skull and found a memory he'd buried under 20 years of silence and contracts. That's when everything shifted. The lights flickered once, just slightly. You might miss it unless you're watching her reflection in the glass. It blinks. Twice. But no one moved. No one even seemed to notice. This wasn't just a game. And this wasn't just a maid. Her first move wasn't a move. It was a message. She didn't push the pawn. She laid it down. Sideways, like a body. And Luke, this man who once out-negotiated a foreign government in 3 minutes, lost every drop of color in his face. Because he'd seen that symbol before. And no, not in a dream. On the floorboards of his childhood home, in ash, after the fire that no official ever investigated. The fire that supposedly killed someone who, as far as the world knows, never existed, but someone else did. A girl, a sister, a name he never told, a soul not even his wife. And as Marlene leaned forward, barely a whisper escaped her lips, but the mic picked it up, filtered through static like a dying radio transmission. She's not finished with you. The footage jumps at that moment. A full 3 seconds. Go missing. When it returns, Luke is no longer seated. The chessboard is empty. The maid is staring straight at the camera. That's when the doors in your house, wherever you are, might creak for no reason. That's when your phone, locked and silent, flashes a name in your notifications. One you've never seen, but somehow recognize. And the question you should be asking isn't who she is. It's why she chose now to come back. But you only get one chance to hear what she says next. The video cuts to black. Then a knock. The knock came again, slow, deliberate. Not on a door. On glass. Luke Brennan's surveillance room, 10 floors beneath his penthouse, was supposed to be sealed, soundproofed, off-grid. Not even his CTO had access. That's why he ran there after the library incident. His pulse thrashing in his ears, trying to find some logic buried in the footage. But when he scrubbed back to the moment, the maid whispered what she shouldn't have known. There was nothing. The audio was clean. Too clean. The video, intact. No static. No whispered name. Just a normal game of chess between a visibly agitated CEO and an expressionless maid. Which, of course, was impossible. Luke heard her. You did, too. But the file is different now, and not just edited, replaced. Metadata wiped, timestamp adjusted. And yet, in the corner of the feed, a detail he hadn't noticed before. A reflection. Barely visible in the chrome of the T-cart. A face, not his, not hers, and not accounted for by the room's layout. The knock came again. He turned toward the glass, but there was nothing. There were only the darkened wall of monitors reflecting his silhouette back at him. Except something was wrong with his reflection. The hands weren't moving. The posture was too still. And then, in a breath of silence, it blinked. Once. Wrong eye. Luke stumbled back, his shoulder slamming into the doorframe. Sweat slicked down the back of his neck as the lights above him dimmed, not off, not flickering, just less, as though the electricity itself had grown uncertain. The knock didn't come again, but someone did. A soft chime sounded from the elevator that led to the sublevel. Impossible. You need 2 keycards to activate it, both physical and biometric. But the doors hissed open anyway. And there, stepping out in a rain-soaked trench coat, holding a styrofoam coffee cup with trembling hands, was Alan Vale. A name you've never heard. Because that's exactly how he designed his life. Alan was Luke's handler during his brief alleged contract with the department. Not CIA, not FBI, something else, something quieter. A paperless ghost unit they used for experiments that were never experiments, only tests for silence. Luke hadn't seen Alan in 13 years. Thought he was dead. And Alan, well, looked like he had been. His eyes were too open. Skin pale, mouth twitching at corners like it was stuck halfway between a smile and a scream. And without greeting, he spoke the worst possible sentence you can say to a man whose reality is breaking. Greater than you saw her, didn't you? Not who, not what happened, just that her. Luke asked him how he knew. Alan just sipped the coffee, with a tremble, then said something muffled. Greater than they always come back when the seal breaks. Luke tried to push past it. Asked Alan for files. Surveillance logs, asterisk, who is she? What is this? Asterisk, Alan just laughed. Not loudly, not manic, just the kind of laugh you hear from someone remembering a joke they were told right before they lost their mind. He said something else. Then, soft, barely audible on the security feed that still, somehow, kept recording. Greater than you don't remember. The school, do you? Luke didn't reply, but his silence gave the answer. Because there was no school, not that he remembered. His earliest memory was waking up in a foster home in Ohio at age 9. Files destroyed in a house fire, no next of kin. That's what he was told. But as Alan's fingers twitched, he reached into his coat and pulled out a folder. Not official, not labeled, just worn paper, stapled clumsily, yellowed with time. Luke opened it, hands shaking, and that's when the pieces began to crawl back. A hallway, white, windowless. A door marked red sector audio stim 4A, and a girl, blonde, small, eyes too bright. She wasn't crying, she was humming. Luke looked at Alan. That wasn't a school. Alan didn't answer. He just hit play on an old cassette recorder that had been taped to the back of the file. What came out wasn't music, not quite words. Either just a girl's voice, whispering his name, but not Luke. The other one, name he hadn't heard. Since the fire, since the erasure, he dropped the recorder. It kept playing, and now you're wondering, what does this have to do with the maid playing chess? That's the wrong question. Ask instead. Asterisk, asterisk, what was sealed inside Luke's mind that needed her to open it? Asterisk, asterisk, because that's the truth behind what no one tells you about memory suppression. It's not about hiding, it's about waiting. Asterisk, waiting for the right sequence to bring it all back. Asterisk, chess, pawns, fire, the laid down piece. Every move was a trigger. And now the memory's leaking in, but it's not just his. Your phone buzzes, a notification, no sender, just a file. Audio _stim _4A, MP3. You didn't subscribe to anything, no one, sent it, but it's there, and you're already reaching for it, and Luke, he's gone now. Not missing, not dead, just out of frame. The feed ends with static, except, when slowed down, frame by frame, right at the end Alan's reflection looks directly into the lens, lips moving silently. He's not saying help, he's mouthing a name, not Luke's, yours. And now the question isn't whether this happened, it's why you were shown it at all, and if you're wondering who let you see it. Ask yourself something deeper. Do you remember the fire? No. Then, look again, that it wasn't his memory being unlocked, it was yours, and something has just made their first move. Chapter 3. The piece that was never on the board. The storm passed some time before dawn, but Luke Brennan didn't see the sunrise. He was still underground, still gripping the edges of the old security desk, the cassette tape hissing behind him like a dying breath refusing to end. For the first time in 32 years, he remembered the hum. Not the melody, just the way it made his teeth ache, the way it always began when the lights buzzed and the hallway filled with that chemical sweet smell. He hadn't imagined it, he hadn't dreamed it. The fire, the red sector, the girl, none of it was fiction. The moment of false clarity came like morphine, clean, sharp, almost holy in how it dulled the terror. Alan laid it out with surgical precision. The chess match, the woman posing as a maid, the laid down piece, each was a mnemonic device, a key inserted into the heavy vault of Luke's suppressed past. A trial, of sorts, a ritualized awakening. She had been one of the others, one of the children. They had called her Echo, because her voice was the only one that could mimic the hum perfectly. She had been left behind when the lab burned, and now, she was delivering a message. You passed the test. That's what Alan said. The danger was over. She had triggered the memory, and the program was complete. Luke laughed, actually laughed, the kind of laugh that came from too many nights of control. Too many years believing he'd built his life from grit and brilliance, when in fact, it had been engineered by something older, colder, and infinitely more calculating. Alan handed him a file. This one marked, and that's when the smell returned. Not strong, not immediate. Just faint, like something left behind too long. Burnt wood, melted plastic, the acidic sweetness of scorched memory. Luke stumbled up the concrete stairs, fingers trembling as he reached the top floor. Back in his penthouse, everything was untouched, pristine. Except for the chessboard, the pawn was laid down again, sideways. And Luke had locked the board in a case. That's when he remembered the first time, not the chess match. Not Echo. The real first time, a classroom, but not really, just white walls and wired chairs. Other children in gray uniforms. One window, but it was painted. No outside view, no sky, just light from a projector flickering across the floor, and the voice from behind the glass, asking each child the same question, over and over, while the light flickered in time with the hum. Greater than, do you remember the fire? Do you remember the fire? Do you remember the one boy screamed when he heard his own name played back through the intercom? In a different voice, not the instructor, not another child. His own voice, from earlier, warped slightly, echoing through the static. And that's what began to fracture Luke. Because that wasn't just a memory that wasn't supposed to be a memory. The others had called it the mirror glitch. When you heard your own memory before, you remembered living it. A crack in the sequence, Luke stood in front of his bedroom mirror now. Not a standard one, a floor-to-ceiling slab of black glass, touch-sensitive. Part of the smart system, it should have shown the room clearly. But tonight, the reflections shimmered at the edges, blurred, like heat rising from asphalt. And behind him, in the mirror, not in the room ****, was the hallway from the facility. ***, red sector, audio for a dot, the door at the end, opening slowly. He turned, nothing behind him, turned back. The door in the reflection was wide open. That's when he heard her voice again, not behind him, not in his head, through the speaker system in the house. unprompted.direct.childlike.not echo. You remembered too soon. And then the smart glass shattered. Not outward. Inward. As if something behind it had punched through. Luke fell back, breath ragged, blood on his hands. The lights in the penthouse flickered. All screens, TVs, phones, monitors lit up with the same message. In old courier type, greater than ***, phase echo is a decoy. ***, and beneath it, another line. Greater than ***, do not trust any recovered memory before timestamp 7 hours 41 minutes and 3 seconds. ***, the timestamp meant nothing until he remembered the fire report. The file he wasn't supposed to read, 7:41:03, was the recorded time of rescue. Luke had no memory of being rescued, because he never was. And suddenly, the entire resolution shattered. He was never released. There was no after. Everything since the fire, his education, his career, his marriage was part of the sequence, an experiment in controlled belief of simulated reality projected into his mind as a way of suppressing whatever happened before. 7 hours, 41 minutes and 3 seconds. But now, the timing was off. Now, the cracks were visible. The pond, the smell, the reflections. An whiff that was even her real identity wasn't a messenger. She was a failsafe, a psychological tripwire. The moment she laid down the piece, the system began to unwind, which meant Alan wasn't real either. Luke crawled back to the console, checking timestamps, replaying the footage of the last 48 hours. And right there, frame by frame, glitched once when he handed the coffee. Again, when he opened the file, his ID badge changed mid-frame, and behind his eyes only for a fraction of a second was static. Not metaphorical, literal television static. The kind they used in the red sector rooms. The reflection hadn't been mimicking Luke. It had been watching, and not from behind the glass, from inside. The sequence. Something was using the false resolution to trigger the next phase, because once Luke believed the mystery was solved, his mind would relax, open itself further, lower its defenses, and that's when the real programming began. The twist is this. You thought you were watching his story, but if you've followed this far, if you've felt the dread, if you've smelled the phantom fire, if you've checked your own reflection after each chapter, you were the subject, not a viewer, not a witness, but the final dormant piece, and someone, somewhere, just laid you down sideways. Watch again, but this time, count the reflections. The first message came through a defunct email address that hadn't received a single ping in over a decade. The subject line was blank, the sender name, just a question mark. Luke Brennan nearly deleted it without opening, chalking it up to some server error still hiccuping from his breach earlier in the week. But something about the timing, 3:19 a.m., the exact hour the power cut out in his penthouse 2 nights ago, made his fingers hover over the trash icon. When he finally clicked, the body of the email was empty. Just a single attachment, a compressed zip file labeled recovered-mirror 041.mp4. When he opened the file, the screen stayed black for 6 seconds. Then the grainy image flickered. A room, with white walls, low ceilings, a child's voice humming something familiar in the distance. Not echoes. A boy this time. The camera shook slightly, like it was being filmed from someone's lap. The timestamp in the corner read *04/17/2005*. Found footage from 20 years ago. Luke couldn't breathe. The room was unmistakable. Red sector. And then he saw himself. A younger version, sitting cross-legged, rocking back and forth slowly. Eyes glazed, murmuring a string of numbers. But it wasn't the video that shattered him. It was the faint reflection in the corner glass, barely visibly, of another child watching. Not from inside the room, from outside it. In full color. In 2025 clothing. With a phone in hand, someone had recorded a video inside his memory. But with future tech. And suddenly, all the explanations collapsed. Echo's ritual. Alan's betrayal. The staged closure. None of it accounted for this. A temporal fracture. Memory distortion, not as trauma but as environmental bleed. Luke Played the video frame by frame. At timestamp 0 hours, 1 minute and 37 seconds, just before the child stops humming, the glass pulses. A glyph flashes for a single frame. Not a letter, not a symbol, but a combination of curves and angles burned into his mind. It was the same symbol he carved into the underside of his childhood bed at age 12, the one he thought came to him in a dream, the one he'd drawn again, unknowingly, in the condensation on his bathroom mirror 4 nights ago. That symbol didn't come from imagination. It was implanted, and others were seeing it too. The next day, another message arrived. This time, a physical letter slipped between pages of an old law journal Luke never remembered buying. The envelope smelled like ozone and faint metal. Inside, a photograph of 6 people, each standing in front of different reflective surfaces: a lake, a black SUV window, an elevator panel, a storefront, a phone screen, a surgical light. All of them wore headphones. None looked directly at the camera. On the back of the photo was a note, typed in courier font: greater than you were right all along. Greater than we've been watching from behind the reflections. Greater than the sequence is failing. Find us before they shut the mirrors completely. It was signed with the same symbol from the video. Luke didn't know what to call them. The others, the watchers. The unactivated. He called the number scrawled in the corner, expecting nothing. Instead, the call rang once and connected to heavy static. Then a voice note, a recording cut through. Greater than tell me your earliest dream. No greeting. No name, just that. And when Luke stammered out the dream about falling through an infinite glass hallway, being watched by a face he couldn't see but always felt, the voice didn't react. Jet said, greater than that's how we all started. Then the line went dead. Over the following days, Luke stopped sleeping. Not out of fear, because he couldn't. Every time he closed his eyes, he woke up somewhere else. Sometimes in a hotel lobby, sometimes at a rest stop he didn't drive to, once, inside a subway tunnel in Baltimore despite never having visited Maryland. He'd check his phone afterward, and always, there'd be a new file. Always titled differently, but always marked recovered, and each file contained a dream, but not his. Shared dreams. Others. Some with his face in the background. People he had never met were remembering him, and he them. One clip footage from a therapy session. Mid-90s showed a girl describing a boy who knew how to make machines talk backward. She sketched his face. It was Luke, age 8, with the same scar on his chin from a bike accident he never had. None of this was possible unless time had been bent or memory was never linear. Then the messages became more desperate. Missives hidden in podcasts, buried as reversed audio tracks, paintings in coffee shops with impossible reflections showing Luke standing behind the artist, Reddit threads that disappeared seconds after posting, but not before he'd screen captured phrases like "you're not crazy, they lied to you," and check your mirrors after 3:19 a.m. A pattern emerged. 3:19, the moment the fire began, in the facility. In him. Ann and others. Each of the watchers had a trigger moment at the same universal time, adjusted for their location. Always, 3:19. Luke started mapping them, pinning their names, their sightings, their recovered memories. And at the center of the map, one constant remained: the observer, an anonymous presence appearing in each recovered file. Never in focus, but always there. A silhouette, a voice on the radio, a reflection in someone's eye. In one case, a name whispered in sign language on the hands of a catatonic child. He's still watching. This observer wasn't like Echo. It didn't interact. It recorded. And if Echo was still safe, the observer was the original architect. Luke traced the glyphs, the symbols, the recurring numbers, and began noticing them outside the map, on cereal boxes. In ticker tape, on financial news channels, etched into the side of a water fountain in an airport lounge. And every time he acknowledged one, someone would vanish. Not dramatically, not in smoke. Just missing. Contacts deleted. Phone numbers rerouted. Their apartments rented to someone else. Their memories scrubbed from mutual friends. This wasn't mind control. This was reality being rewritten in real time. And that's when Luke stopped asking if it was real, because real was no longer a category he could trust. That's when the third perspective broke through. A file dropped on his desktop while he was watching an unrelated live stream. No download prompt, no upload source. Just there, a video file titled mirror_response 031-reedit_final.mp4.mp4.it. Open to static. Then a man's voice. .com, unshaken, American, unmistakably real. If you're hearing this, then your sequence is at 91% decay. Greater than you've begun seeing them, greater than you've begun being seen. That means you're close. They created echo to keep us dormant. Greater than they created the fire to explain the pain. But neither were true. The fire was invitation. Greater than you stepped through it. Now ask yourself, when was the last time someone remembered you before you spoke? Exactly. The screen pulsed. Then went black. Then showed Luke's face, live, through his own webcam, but he hadn't turned it on. The final frame was a list: usernames, coordinates, dates, people who watched the video, people who would be next, people like you, because you're not watching fiction, you're recovering a memory, that knot in your stomach, the one you can't explain. That's the mirror calling. That's the glyph. In your dream, you were right all along. You're not crazy. They lied to you, and now the system is folding. Inward, find the symbol, count the reflections, follow the 319 thread, because the next move is yours, and they're already watching.